Is it just me or do movies kind of stink these days? Remakes, reboots, sequels. How many superhero movies do we really need? You guys, I miss the good old days, the rom-coms, Meg Ryan, Tom Hanks, Julia Roberts, Hugh Grant. Unique scripts, action movies, original ideas, stories that made me feel something. Now most films seem poorly scripted with terrible acting. I don't even want to go to the movie theater. I want to sit at home in my pajamas and make popcorn so I can turn it off when it gets boring or I can scroll. That's what I find myself doing. We have a problem. What happened to Hollywood? Okay, so the reason why I really wanted to have you on is
Yeah.
because I love your videos. I love your
Thank you.
perspective on film and storytelling and what is going on with Hollywood? What is going on with original movies? And I have a lot of questions. I have a lot of graphics. You're going to have to just bear with me. So
No, I love
I
it.
thank you. I thank you. So I think the first place to start is I'm going to share a screen with you and I want you to see this graphic because I think this is helpful. And for everybody listening and not watching, so this is our summer movie release list from 1996 versus 2025. And I'm going to go down
Mm,
this 96 list. So you have Twister. I mean, come on,
a
Twister.
classic.
Mission Impossible, The Rock with Sean Connery, Hunchback of Notre Dame, which Disney movie, hello, The Nutty
Mm.
Professor, Independence Day, which I just as a child loved that movie, Dragonheart, which didn't do great in the critic reviews, but Kevin Costner, The Cable Guy, Jim Carrey, Courage Under Fire, and A Time to Kill. So you have this list of amazing original content. You have funny, you have family, you have action, and summer blockbusters. And everything is new, everything is different, nothing is repeating itself. And then you look
Mm,
at this 2025 list. Thunderbolts, which is technically a Marvel superhero movie, which I don't know how many
yes.
superhero movies we need anymore, but there's another one.
Yeah.
And we had Mission Impossible, Final Reckoning, Jurassic World Rebirth, The Fantastic Four, Superman. I Know What You Did Last Summer, F1, Megan 2.0, which was a horror movie I never heard of, Happy Gilmore 2, and The Bad Guys 2. Everything highlighted for those of you listening and not watching, 8 of them, 8 out of 10 of our big summer blockbuster releases for 2025 were either reboots or sequels. Reboots
Mm,
or sequels. And I think Thunderbolts, I'm technically counting as kind of a sequel into this Marvel superhero.
it is. Yeah. I would say because it's in the world.
It is.
Yeah.
And I'm disappointed in this because, Julia, like, I want to invite you over right now and make popcorn and get in our jammies. And I want to watch every movie from the 1996 list, but I don't really want to watch any of them from the 2025 list.
Yeah.
I'm just not interested. So, what happened?
It's hard. It's so hard. And me as just a screenwriter in the process, a cog in the wheel, I don't have all of the answers, but I think that because these movies now cost so much money and because there are so many competitive outlets
Mhm.
and because people maybe aren't going to the movies as much as they used to and um people are looking for sure things
Mm,
and sure things are things with proven track records, and things that have proven track records are sequels or reboots, household names. Everyone is looking for a reason to drive people to the theaters or, to get their butts on the couch to watch these movies. And
yeah.
that is what it is. I think that there's a deep fear in the industry, and that's fear of people who don't want to lose their jobs. So executives who are greenlighting things because they feel familiar, fear of distributors, fear from, people involved in the movie making process. I just think that there's a lot of fear and it's hard to want to invest in new things that are unproven.
Interesting. So then how are they able to do it? Okay, let's just use the 1996 list that I threw up. How are they
Yeah.
doing it then in the 90s? Because a lot of those had big names for sure. I mean, you had
Yeah.
Nutty Professor, which was like Eddie Murphy and Sean Connery and Helen Hunt. I mean, there were big names in almost every one of those movies, but they weren't proven storylines at all.
Yeah, I mean, I wish that I had been around in the 90s to be in that world of screenwriting, and I'm sure that the screenwriters or the filmmakers behind those projects were also equally huge. I mean, it's not like people eh,
Mhm,
movies making a movie or making a television show is like running a $1 million corporation,
mhm,
right? There's so much that goes into it. And so I think there have always been these kind of checks and balances or looking to proven people in order to helm big projects. But there might have been a little bit more um a less of like the scarcity mindset around
okay,
it. I think that was maybe what was shown. I think now it's like all of these movies almost have a filter over them. Like it's, social media and things.
mhm,
It's how do we drive people to the box office? Where I think before going to the movies was such a regular part of, you know, people's everyday or their weekend life.
yeah. Yeah, I think you're very right about that because I remember I'm a millennial. I remember going to the movies with my family to see whatever, Disney animated movie was coming out, and
Yeah.
we didn't go all the time, but it was something that we did as a family, and we always had Friday night movie nights, and I do feel like seeing movies was a big deal going to the theater, and if you were lucky, you got to get popcorn, or my mom would, like, basically make us sneak in snacks because she wasn't gonna pay the concession stand prices.
Sure. Right.
And it
Yes.
was a thing, but I can't tell you the last time I went to a movie theater.
Well, see, that's where we differ because I go to the movies all of the time. I love going to the movies. I think it's such an experience. And to be
Mhm,
honest, it just in my personal life that I've openly been sharing about, I in my recent starting over period, I have a hard time sitting on my couch and watching things. I have
mhm,
a hard time turning off my brain. But when I'm in a theater and I'm immersed, I love it. And so I don't have that problem, but I understand a lot of people do. It's also my job. So those tickets are a tax write-off. But it's for I think
"Hey, girl."
to bring, your family of 4 to the movies is incredibly expensive. And so you want to make sure that it is something that you were really excited to go see. And
Mhm.
that's really, I think, where um all of those sequels and reboots pop up, unfortunately.
Interesting. I wonder
Yeah.
too, did you see a big decline with movie theater attendance at COVID? Was COVID the big drop off, or was it happening pre-COVID for your industry?
That's a great question. I don't know the numbers, but I would assume COVID was a really big hit. I think that there was probably a drop off before just because of social media, because of all of the streaming platforms where
Yeah.
now it's like, why do I need to go to a theater or why do I need to pay so much money when I'm already paying, what is it now, 15, $20 a month for Netflix? So it definitely made that experience less expensive by being able to stream a lot of quality movies on your TV. Video on demand did that as well. A lot of movies were releasing very quickly towards VOD. So particularly now, you really don't have to wait that long to watch something that was in the theater on your television screen. Um, but yeah, I think that COVID made all of us homebodies, and so I think
Mhm.
that it definitely didn't help.
Yeah, and it seemed like streaming just became the norm because you are right. When we were younger, a movie would come out at Christmas and it would not come to the VHS tape or the DVD, later on until like 6 months would go by, or it felt like forever until a movie
Yeah,
would come out that you could own at home or even get from even Blockbuster, if
for
anybody
sure.
remembers those old stores, but feels like forever ago, in
Yeah.
elementary school, it's like who's who in the 6th grade at Blockbuster on a Friday night. But now you are right that a movie comes out and you can, like, rent it, I guess, for 20 bucks or 25 bucks pretty quick on
And
the
that's
streaming
something
services.
it's something that a lot of people in the film industry, people who are actors, writers, directors have been saying, we object to this because for many of us, our back end deals once things are in production does rely, we get some sort of percentage of the box office number. So the longer it is in theaters, the better it is for everyone's bottom line.
Right.
But there must be some sort of financial, you know, positive for them to the studios to release it onto VOD faster. But it does, unfortunately, just make you not want to run to the theater if you know that you can see something in a month's time.
Well, yeah, because I can sit in my pajamas and
For
pause for
sure.
bathroom breaks and
Absolutely.
refill my cheap snacks as often as I want to and make my healthy homemade popcorn,
For
you know?
sure. For
So
sure.
and VOD is video on demand,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
that's basically lingo for video comes out, and then us all commoners can watch it at home whenever we want access to it.
Yeah. So if you have Comcast or Spectrum or any one of those companies, you can buy it straight from them. Or it used to be pay per view. That would be kind of the old version of that when I was growing up. But now you can get it through your cable provider, or you can also go to
Okay.
Prime and buy
Right.
something, Apple and buy something. So you can get those
Yeah.
movies just much faster than you would.
Got you, got you. Okay. So then streaming has really affected so much. The technology change has affected. I'm going to throw up this segment from it's a Matt Damon quote, and I'm going to try to share it. I'm kind of not great with tech sometimes. So let's see. Let's
I love
see if
it.
I can do it. And so y'all who are listening, Matt Damon was on Hot Ones, and this is what he had to say about the changing industry.
Well, so what happened was the DVD was a huge part of our business, of our revenue stream. And technology has just made that obsolete. And so the movies that we used to make, you could afford to not make all of your money when it played in the theater because you knew you had the DVD coming behind the release. And 6 months later, you'd get a whole nother chunk. It would be like reopening the movie almost. And when that went away, that changed the type of movies that we could make. I did this movie Behind the Candelabra, and I talked to a studio executive who explained it was a $25 million movie. I would have to put that much into print and advertising, right, to market it, what we call P&A. So I'd have to put that in P&A. So now I'm in $50 million. I have to split everything I get with the exhibitor, right, the people who own the movie theaters. So I would have to make $100 million before I got into profit. And the idea of making $100 million on a story about like this love affair between these two people, yeah, I love everyone in the movie, but that's suddenly a massive gamble in a way that it wasn't in the 1990s when they were making all those kind of movies, the kind of movies that I loved and the kind of movies that were my bread and butter.
Can you break this down, what he's saying for us a little bit?
Yeah. So essentially he's talking about just the ways in which the movie sales have depleted over time. So now again, instead of DVDs, we're doing video on demand or it's going to streamers where as you may have seen, I do these residual check videos sometimes and where I talk about residual checks that I've gotten for movies that I was in as an actor when I was a kid. I was a kid actor. And I still make sometimes hundreds, if not thousands of dollars from movies that I was in when I was 9 or 12 or 22, which is lovely. We love to see it. But when those movies are released onto streamers, I make significantly less than when they're video on demand or when they play on cable. And that is because of the deals that these movies and TV shows how they are sold to streamers. It's just less money for all participants involved. And, because it's not streaming per view, it's streaming like one lump sum. So that's the difference. And that kind of encompasses the DVD sales of it all. The marketing is something that goes over my head. But essentially what he's saying is that when you have a $25 million movie, um, the marketing budgets of these projects are huge. And on top of that, you do have to share profits with the theaters. So essentially saying how this small, which because it $25 million is not considered an indie, but it's certainly, I think Netflix big budget movie division starts at 40 million. So it is still kind of a modest movie, how that budget quickly becomes just not realistic when you factor in the cost of marketing and then also sharing that revenue with the theaters.
Interesting. Okay, so let me see if I can get this from my non-Hollywood brain.
Yeah.
So you make a movie, and this is how it used to be. You would put it in theaters, and you basically the box office numbers gives back to the studio and the actors and everybody who made the movie, and then, you split some of that with the theaters because they're letting people come watch
Hmm.
it. So basically, you make a chunk of profit or money or revenue from ticket sales of theaters. And
Hmm.
then it would come out on DVD, and you would
Yes.
make, again, money from however many DVDs were purchased. Each DVD, each purchase of that was more money that everybody involved was getting from this project. But
Yes. And then,
now,
well, and then if
okay,
you also, too, some of my favorite movies would be on TNT or TBS or USA. And every time they play, everyone involved in the movie also gets a cut of that.
gets a residual. Okay, because that
Yes.
was on the network and playing on cable. But
Yes.
now when Netflix buys You've Got Mail for 6 months, they're buying it with this one-time fee, and every
Right.
time it gets played, everybody's not making money from this
Right.
movie again.
Yes. So you
Wow,
get
so
a
it's really
percentage of what that streaming purchase
right.
was.
Right, but it's
Yeah.
a small, but it's a purchase price up front, and there's only so
Sure.
much percentage you can take out of that upfront cost versus even if You've Got Mail goes off the hook one October because all the girlies wanna have an autumn movie, and it gets streamed, 20 million times, that doesn't matter because it was purchased for X amount, and so you're never gonna make the money off of that again.
Yeah, and that is why,
Right.
in parts for these strikes that we had in
Mhm.
2023, and I have my own feelings about them. I'm a union member and I'm union
Right.
proud, but also it was just extremely difficult financially. And sometimes I wonder if the juices were the squeeze. But one of the things that I think that was very helpful is um, one of the things that we agreed upon, at least with the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, is that if a movie or TV show was in kind of that Netflix top 10, you would end up getting a higher percentage of residuals for those because it's true. You shouldn't, Suits at the highlight during the pandemic or right after was going crazy. All of a sudden it had this resurgence. And when it's playing on USA, those actors are getting, again, residuals per views.
Mhm.
But when it's playing on Netflix, it was one lump sum. And so there was some sort of deal that was struck that if a movie or TV show got to that top 10, meaning that it was extremely watched, that there was some sort of bonus um, that was
Wow.
affiliated with that.
Can you remind everybody what was the strike for? Because I
Great
think
question.
too there were so many things 'cause I mean, AI was a big part of it and how the industry is changing with that. And from a writers and creative perspective, I mean, what were you guys going for in the union? What were you hoping to achieve with some of the changes?
Yeah, what's so funny because it's now become retrospectively this
Mm,
AI strike. But I think that while I was in it, again, I was in both unions that were striking. I was in SAG, the Screen Actors Guild, and also the Writers Guild. It The AI component was initially such an afterthought for so many of us. It was more about wages. It was streaming. That was kind of the biggest thing. It was mini rooms. There were just a lot of cost cutting measures. I think for SAG actors, there were a bunch of TV shows that were downgrading people from maybe regulars to guest stars and things like that. Everyone was just trying to cut corners, I think, after COVID, which was difficult for, I think, a lot of performers and writers to kind of wrap their heads around because entertainment was the thing that I think got so many of us through the pandemic and helped us all to feel connected even when we were so isolated. Without that art, there wouldn't have been a lot of ways to kind of stay sane during that crazy time period that I know I, for one, have just kind of blacked out of my mind. But so to me it was financial largely. It was like, how can we, one, raise minimums? How can we, things in the WGA that had been overlooked, like for a long time, writers teams, which are teams of two people, they would only, I believe, like both wouldn't be qualifying for health insurance. So just like strange things like that, or where as a screenwriter was only guaranteed one draft of a script. But essentially, that led to many producers, you end up writing 8 drafts of the script and they only count as one. So things like that, fairness things about
yep.
mini rooms, which were rooms that should have been to WGA requirements where they were larger and for more time, but it was just ended up being higher level writers in smaller periods of time that were kind of hurting the industry. So things like that. But now, again, retrospectively, AI, it almost feels like this was the AI strike, which it didn't feel like when we were in it. It wasn't as big of
Sure.
a component, I think, as it is now, or it became later on in the strike. But yeah, so the strikes were a really tough time for a lot of people, not just those of us who were in the unions. I think for crew and what's called below the line,
Mhm.
crew and costumes and marketing and catering. And, it was so difficult. It's already such a difficult field. It's a freelance job. So it's like this. It's a roller coaster of when am I going to get paid? When am I not going to get paid? And so to have the basically 6 months before where everyone was like, is this happening? Is it not happening? Are we going to move forward with projects? Are we not? And then to have the 6 months of it happening, or more than 6 months, I don't even remember. I think it was March to October. It or May to October. It was just really devastating financially for so many people.
Yeah.
And I always say this industry truly, you will hear people talk about it all the time. It's a matter of who can outlast. It's like Survivor, outwit, outplay, outlast, and you just have to outlast everyone else. Not really in a competitive sense, but people quit
Mhm.
and leave for so many different reasons.
Sure.
And I think that unfortunately, the pandemic plus the strikes were
Mhm.
those kind of outlasting events that a lot of people couldn't outlast.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think too, there's this perception that everybody in Hollywood makes multi-millions of dollars a year. Everybody's living in
No.
these Bel Air mansions and they're hanging out with so and so, A-listers. And I think the truth is that's such a small sliver and percentage of the industry of Hollywood and storytelling and the creative arts. And there's tens of thousands of people who are employed, to your point, in lighting, in costumes, in makeup, in craft services, in the writing, in the production side, who are just making your normal average American salary. And so when
Yeah.
those strikes happen, it's devastating because they don't get $25 million a movie like Jennifer Lawrence and can go just kind of sit on their booty and eat bonbons. They're actually really
Yeah.
struggling financially because it does employ so many people. And I do think we don't realize in the normal, I call it the common sphere, how many
Yeah.
people are employed in that industry. It's like healthcare.
So
Healthcare has
many.
tens of thousands of people, right?
Yeah.
And so does the film industry because it's so widespread.
It's so many people. And even like I said, catering, like local businesses who are doing craft services for a production. And so when productions start to get moved out of LA or move into different places, it's really difficult, even as a writer. And I feel very fortunate because I get to do I hate talking about um like income disparities within this job, because when you do get paid, it is a lot of money. And, it not always, but even
Sure.
just union rates, it's a lot. And it doesn't always happen. And yes, you have to pay agents and managers and lawyers commission as well. And so it's expensive, but the rate itself is incredible. And, I grew up, my mom was a special ed teacher in Philly, and my dad was a carpenter who installed, did garage doors and, supermarket casings and things like that. So I totally understand. And I never want it to come off as sounding like, oh, poor Hollywood screenwriters, because it's a job that you choose to do and it's freelance. But, I have projects that you end up making a year's salary. Like
Mm.
you end up making a six-figure salary, but you've been trying to pitch and shop this project for 3-4 years. And
Sure.
so you just have to have so many different irons in the fire, and there is so much free work. And yeah, it's a hustle. It's very much a hustle culture.
What made you wanna be a screenwriter?
That's a great question. I think I fell into it a bit. I have always been a writer. I was a kid actor. I had small parts in big movies, anything that came into the Philadelphia area. M. Night Shyamalan, and I was in a bunch of his projects growing up. Jack Reacher, which shot in Pittsburgh, and also an only child, so very imaginative. And I just the acting stuff was so hard. And suddenly I found momentum in screenwriting. I wrote essentially what was my first script. I wrote the first act of it in college at USC in a screenwriting class. And I had been interning at a production company, and I showed it to my boss. His name was Chuck Gordon, and he and his brother Larry back in the day did the first two Die Hards and Field of Dreams. I mean, this guy was a legend. And he read the first 30 pages that I had written, and he said, "You can do this. Keep doing it." And that was all that I needed. And so I did keep doing it. And that script ultimately, once I finished it, got me repped, got me my first job as an assistant on The Adventures of Puss in Boots, which was a show on Netflix. And ultimately I started my journey in kids animation and moved on. But it was a momentum thing. I caught momentum in writing, and that script kind of took off and went from there. And I did have a thought that it would be a lot easier than a career in acting. And I think that they're equally just as hard.
I have no doubts they're just as hard, because it is. It's all up and down. It's all momentum and who you know. And sometimes when it's good, it's good. And when it's
Yeah.
bad, it's really bad. And, some of my actor friends from the New York days, it's tough. It's a
Yeah,
tough business. It's just a
it
tough
is.
business. But I do love it. I love the storytelling aspect. And so I admire you and I'm inspired by you, because it's so wonderful to see an artist. You're an artist and you're sharing your
Thank
craft with the
you.
world. And I love that. And what scares me though is AI. What scares me
Yeah.
about that is AI coming into the common ground to be used, because what I love about a beautiful script or poetry or artwork or a movie is that a human created it. A
Mhm.
human with all their imperfections and all of their craziness sat down and made something so beautiful. And I'm afraid that AI is going to take away from that. What are you guys thinking in the industry with AI?
I think that I might have a different perspective, one that has been
Good.
shaped particularly over the past year and a half, which is that I can't control what I can't control, and I only
Yeah.
can control what I can. And so I think that I'm trying to look at it like the advent of the computer or the advent of the internet.
Mhm.
Like, I understand that it poses a lot of risks, but there's one, I only have a certain capacity for the things I cannot change. And, I am basically computer illiterate. So I feel as though I might not be able to have it work for my advantage, but yeah, I understand. I personally, something that I don't know if you've seen, I made a video about. I also make content. For those of you who don't know, I make a content creator, and I have had videos taken from one particular company where they AI'd my mouth, basically deep faking me to
Scary.
advertise for their brand, which is a medical brand that as a newly single woman, I am horrified that my face is attached to, but it is not real. I have so many people reaching out to me and being like, "Girl, get your bag." But is this you? It doesn't necessarily look like you. I'm like, no, it's not me. But so that is scary. I think that component of it is really scary, having your image utilized. But I will also say that when I was younger, having been in movies and TV shows, my image was utilized in other ways that just weren't deep fake. So again, it is something I don't personally believe that currently an AI uh, platform can create the art that people can. Will it be able to in the future? I don't know, because it will aggregate and steal and adapt. I think that is so far off. I was at Austin Film Festival recently, and Chris McQuarrie, who I would say is a mentor of mine from my Jack Reacher days, talked about this, and he said AI can't do what we do yet, but he said it will always lack empathy, which I think is the biggest component of what you were talking about, the human storytelling experience, particularly in movies and TV shows. So again, I know it's scary, but in this industry, in my life, what I have just realized is sometimes you have to put those blinders on and focus on the things that you can control. And the things that I can control are making art and making movies and TV shows and short stories, things that entertain and maybe sometimes even talk about some of those fears and challenges of AI. But ultimately, there's not a lot that I personally can
No.
do aside from not utilize it or utilize it in a way that's to my advantage, I suppose.
Yeah, and I do think it can be a great research tool, especially if you're in that writer's block moment and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I just need a dump of ideas or something." I do think it's a great tool. And I think I was concerned because I had, again, was it true or not? Who knows? TikTok, it's hard to know what's true on IG
It
Reels.
is.
I don't know, right? I mean, I feel like I'm constantly like, "Do I believe this or not?" But one of the things I saw was that they were saying, well, we're not going to do screenwriting so much as teaching young kids coming out of these art schools and film schools how to prompt. We want to prompt AI to write this story of a male, female lead in 1890s and New Mexico, blah, blah, blah. And so they're prompting, but they're not writing. Have you seen any of that come through?
I haven't. I saw there was a TikTok that I saw of someone who purports to be in AI in the film industry. And she was saying that now it's a requirement for if you want to be a showrunner or a TV writer, they're looking for people who can prompt. And essentially, what I assume that means is just how to very specifically prompt these AI, whether it's Sora or ChatGPT or what have you, to give you the output that you're looking for. And I have not heard that at all from anyone I know that I work with.
Good.
And so and a lot of screenwriters who I know or who I'm TikTok or Instagram friends with had
Mhm.
posted on her comment section basically saying, where is your basis for this? I do
Yeah.
not see
I'm
this
in the industry
anywhere.
and nobody's telling me to do this. So where is this coming
Yeah,
from?
I
Yeah.
haven't had that experience at all, and it's not to say that it hasn't happened or maybe one person said it, and but I think it's maybe it will in the future.
Sure.
Maybe it is something that people should learn how to do. I don't know. I just it's not something that's happening yet
Good. Good, because
from my
I want the
experience.
yeah, well, good, because I want your brain writing the shows. I want the human element writing that because I think you're to your point, that's how we experience that empathy and that connection with the characters and the story and those elements is because a human writes it, so then you can relate to it. And I do think sometimes you can tell when a computer has generated something and it's a little bit flat or stagnant on some
Of
level,
course.
and that's gonna come through a lot more. What I wanna understand as a screenwriter, what has happened to the writing in what is going on? Because okay, and so let me back up. So, we're talking
Mhm.
about now we stream. So Netflix has Netflix Studios and Amazon Prime has Prime Studios and Apple has their Apple Studios and they're pumping like hundreds of millions of dollars into these production studios. But then when I watch their movies, I think I feel like I'm watching a bad Hallmark movie. The acting feels subpar, the scripting feels subpar. And it's not to say that people working or creating aren't talented, but something is just off. And then I go back and I want to watch You've Got Mail. I want to watch Notting Hill. I want to watch Sweet Home Alabama, which was panned when it came out. But now I'm like, that's like the best movie ever because they all seem genuine and there was good chemistry. It's like my best friend's wedding. And it's like, what has happened to the rom-com genre because it's bad. It's just bad what's coming out.
Okay, so here's what I will say. I will say a bunch of things. The first is that no one sets out to make a bad movie ever.
Mhm.
And the hardest part of the process to get through is the script. That is, it's the first phase. It is the most scrutinized process. It is also constantly in flux up until you're in post production. You are rewriting lines for the actors to ADR, which means you put them in after the fact. I think I wonder if it's like a taste level situation that is happening. But yes, there's a certain comedy that I love. I'll go positive. There's a certain comedy that I love, which is that
No, go
very
negative.
fast.
Take us down. No, I'm kidding.
there's but I love like a fast paced,
Mhm.
non-improv feeling
Okay.
comedy. When
Like,
it's,
do you have an example?
think 21 Jump Street or, Frederick Sarah Marshall. It's that, but it's just quick. And it feels intentional. And I think that there is a phase of comedy that people are excited about now, which is not my cup of tea, which is it feels more improvisational and it kind of meanders a bit and it doesn't hit those punches. It's almost like everything has become a dramedy in a sense. And so or it's like TikTok comedy or more sketchy and like sketch comedy. And that's not something that I relate to as much. I also think that there might be, well, twofold, kind of to your point earlier when we were talking about AI. I think that what makes shows and movies and content and entertainment so wonderful is when something is really specific. That is to me what can help elevate someone's writing or elevate someone's content is specificity. And I think that a lot of the AI generated, computer generated things lack that specificity. And sometimes I think that some of the newer TV shows and movies or the streaming movies and TV shows are looking to appeal to such a broad audience that they lack that specificity. And I also think that there are a lot of bad old movies and TV shows that we maybe just have some nostalgia around. And so yeah, I think it's all sorts of different things, but I think it comes down to not taking a risk. I think it comes down to too many cooks. There's sometimes too many cooks. Everyone wants to say, everyone wants to make sure that their voice is heard in a note. There's so many things, but what I will always see is that no one sets out to make a bad movie or TV show. I have experienced it so many times that so often the script that you write is not the script that makes it to the final end zone. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard. There's also just more stuff out there now than ever before. We used to have 3 TV stations, and so there's just more. And so things are bound to be bad, I think. And so we now have such prestige television that we didn't have previously that of course, there's going to be a mix. So I try to be optimistic about it because again, I've been in those development rooms and everyone is trying to make something great.
Yeah. Well,
we
it's
just
good.
don't always succeed.
I'm glad that everybody's trying to keep it good, keep it real, keep it fresh. And I don't doubt that because I don't think anybody wants to create a bad song or create a bad movie or create a bad show. I mean, nobody wants that. But it does feel like just so much of what's coming out and new, and maybe it is just too much, too fast. And can you dive into what you meant by specific? I'm going to tongue twist that. So do you mean that, think of name a couple of your favorite old rom-coms, and by old, I mean like 90s and early 2000s nostalgia. But are you saying they weren't trying to appeal to everybody? And
that's a great question. I think what I mean more is what I always tell my writers when I work with emerging writers is, can we make it more specific? I think often if we're looking at a character, I always tell writers, okay, like what actor do you have in mind for that? Because then we can start getting into the voice, even the intonations, the way that they talk, right? Like specific on the page is just so much better if we can. Screenwriting is a visual medium, even though it is words on a page. You are trying to craft a visual image. And so, if we walk into interior bar, okay, are we at a cocktail lounge or are we at a dive bar? Or, can we feel the stickiness of the floor? Can we see who the bartender would be behind the bar? Is it someone who's this, beautiful, sleek woman, or is it this grizzled older guy who looks like he lives there? So finding that is kind of what I mean in terms of specificity. But I do think that, and look, I'm not on the other side of it. I'm not on the marketing side. I'm not on the exec side, but every studio, every network, every production company, they have their mandates and they're looking for things to fill different buckets. And some of those buckets may be, Gen Z boys, and some of those buckets, I look at the Paramount Plus situation, the kerfuffle that just happened with Taylor Sheridan, but, that was a specific niche that he was filling over at Paramount Plus, right?
Yep.
It was like men and like probably men 30s to boomers, and that was kind of that niche that he was filming. It was a very specific group of people that they were looking to tailor it to. Rom-coms are typically women. Something else that I find interesting about rom-coms and mandates, what you hear a lot now is that you couldn't make a show like Friends today because it doesn't have a big enough hook. It's just a bunch of friends who are living together in New York. And so oftentimes what people want with it's not just enough to have a nice rom-com. It's what is that big hook that makes it feel unique and original. And sometimes you don't see what that was by the time it's gotten to the end of production. That hook has been lost. But that's really what people, by people I mean executives, are looking for. What is the big hook of this that makes it stand out from just another rom-com about two best friends who are going to end up together? You know, it's but they're in space. You know, it's like that kind of.
And they're riding backwards on a horse on a rocket ship.
Exactly. So it's like, what is that? What is that hook? So it's and that is very specific, is finding what that hook is. It feels almost narrow.
I'm glad you brought up Taylor Sheridan, because when you were talking about being really specific, he immediately hit his little empire that he has built of shows is so specific, because it's not going to appeal to everybody, but who it does appeal to loves it, dominates it, watches it religiously. I mean, and I loved Yellowstone 1883. Actually 1923 was my favorite, if I'm going to be honest, because
really
I'm a heartless romantic. You know, I have no heart, but I love a good romance, right? And so I just loved the romance that was underneath that first season of 1923. Second season, I was like, oh my gosh, they're never going to be together. And I don't even know why we're filming this, because I'm here for love. I am here for that hot man. But, you know, but Taylor Sheridan has built this empire, and because he's so specific, and he isn't afraid either to ruffle feathers. He's not afraid to say things that people don't want to hear, or depict a way of life that feels foregone. And I do think that risk-taking is helpful. I think that risk-taking is helpful in a lot of ways. Do you feel like some of the industry has lost its risk or its voice for the fear of being politically incorrect or saying something that offends somebody? And I think about this in comedy genres a lot. I mean, not just like The Office or Friends, but looking back at Wedding Crashers, which I mean, I don't think they could make a movie like that again. It's just so out of left field, but man, I die laughing still.
No, it's true. I'm not sure. You know, I'm not so sure. I think from my side of the equation, which I think is, you know, the only side I can really speak from, I feel as though there's so much competition in the industry that it really makes you say a bit, you know, you say jump, I'll say how high. So I often look at, when I'm working with studios or when I'm working with production companies, they are the client. And it's like I'm a consultant, or it's like I'm, you know, a freelancer for hire. Great. You have a vision of what you want, and I'm going to show you what I think is the best way to fulfill that vision. But if they push back enough, ultimately they're paying me. I'm going to give them the vision that they want. And I think what is cool about someone like Taylor Sheridan is that he said, you know, the story of him even selling Yellowstone, he was like, I'm not going to LA. You know, they got him a private plane or something. Like, he was, no, I'm not doing it.
Wait, what is the story? Because I don't think a lot of people know.
He had pitched everywhere. He was an actor. He was on one of my favorite shows, Veronica Mars. He had a guest starring role on a couple of episodes. He had an arc. But he was an actor, and then he wrote this pilot, and they pitched it all over the place at the time he had the farm that he had, and they pitched it everywhere, and there was everyone said no, and then there was Paramount Plus, which was a fledgling network at the time. It had just started, which is funny. I also pitched one of their first shows when they had just started. And he basically said, no, I'm not pitching to these people. And I think they ultimately sent a private plane to get him or something. Um, and that's how he started this empire. And there's something about that to be said. There's probably some like male ego that I don't possess that that gave him the audacity. And also I think at a certain point, if you've been in this industry for so long, you just get tired of the bullshit and you say, I give up in a sense, like, no, I'm not jumping through the hoops anymore, and take it or leave it. And sometimes I think that that attitude almost has more power. It has to be earned. I can hear people in my head already being like, like newer writers being like, take it or leave it, and there is a hierarchy, and there is a kind of a ladder that you have to climb to get there, but there is something admirable about saying, no, this is the best version of this product, do it, and having that faith. And but I think so often, just like execs are scared of things flopping because there's just so much money on the line, writers and creatives are also afraid because you only get a couple of chances.
Okay. So how does it work then? Do you have an idea for a script, a Western, since we're on Taylor Sheridan? You write a Western and beautiful Julia, you go take it to all the studios and you pitch it out. Is that how, or are they looking for something and then you get hired on to write what they're already looking for? How does that process even work?
Yes, both. Both are applicable. Yes. So currently, right now, in my slate of like 7 or 8 projects that I have that I call them just my irons in the fire. I have one script that I wrote, came up with the idea and wrote out the script. And so that is set up at a production company. And so sometimes people will take a script and they buy it. That's called a spec script. When you write a script for free, it's called a spec. That's one way to go about it. The other way is that you come up with an idea and you pitch it. So you don't write anything first. That's how I sold a show to Freeform a couple of years ago. And that's how I sold the show. I came up with a big pitch. This is what the show is. Then they bought it and then they pay you to write the first episode and, subsequent episodes if it goes. What's happening a lot now, or the phase that I'm in my career, is where production companies and studios and networks say, we have an idea, whether that's a piece of IP, a book, a graphic novel, a short story, or just a nugget that someone in the office said, I want to do a movie about this, or that an A-list star said, I want to be in a movie about this. And then they will either talk one-on-one to certain writers, or they'll go out with it as an open writing assignment. And so they send it out to agencies and/or writers that they have relationships with, and you pitch on that take. So you go in and you basically have to come up with the entire TV show or movie idea, and they decide whether or not you get the job, and then they pay you to write it. So
Then you write it. Wow.
yeah. So there's a lot of different ways, but most of the work that you do initially is for free.
Wow, that's so
Yeah.
interesting. And then how do you get it in front of people? You must have to have an agent or a manager, or are you able just to cold submit? I can't imagine that's a big welcome thing in the industry, though.
Well, I mean, that's a great question.
Yeah.
I have an agent and a manager, and that is really the vetting point for a lot of people. That's if you want to pitch to Netflix, you have to have an agent or a manager. However, how do people get agents or managers? They query, or you just have to get the attention of an executive at a studio or a production company. How does that work? Well, there are sites like the Blacklist where you pay to host your script, and then producers can look through and see if there are any log lines, basically like a 20 to 30 word description of your project where you try to hook someone into wanting to read it. You can query production companies and studios, basically send them cold emails. Again, that's harder. Or the biggest thing is networking. The reason that I got my first agent basically right out of college was because in one of my college classes, I became friends with a girl in my screenwriting class. A year and a half later, I ran into her at a USC tailgate, and it turns out that she was an assistant at this agency. And she said, "Did you ever finish that script? I want to give it to my boss." And 2 weeks later, I was repped by her boss. And so things like college alumni groups, things like film festivals, things like, just being an assistant in Hollywood and kind of having those connections. People who I once met an agent at UTA who got me on what's called the UTA job list, which is just like an industry kind of email of all of the jobs in Hollywood, because an college essay tutor, I went to her when I was in high school, told her my ambitions, and she was like, "Oh, my son works at UTA." Connected me. We got lunch when I was out in LA, right? But I've known people who, they were like, "Oh, my dad, his college roommate ended up being a showrunner," right? Or someone in a walking group who the mom was like, "Yeah, my son is a movie writer. Why don't you guys meet up?" So it's really about putting your ambitions out there and having a very strong, I think, personal brand, and also log line for your projects that just feels like, "Oh my gosh, I have to see that." Or if you're talking to a friend and you're saying, "Oh, I want to do a movie about this," and they're like, "That would make a great movie. I have to see it." That's the kind of, that's really the
That's
reaction
the
you're looking
response
for.
you want, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And isn't
Yeah.
it amazing how in such a big industry, in such a big world, how small it really is,
It
that
is.
relationships really are what drives so much of life experience. And it really doesn't even matter if it's the film or movie or Hollywood industry. It's everywhere. Every industry is really who
Yes.
you know, and networking in those relationships. And that's why I always tell people, if you're trying to, because I feel like as a millennial, there's so many people that are changing careers or going different directions or trying to follow those passions, follow those dreams. I'm always saying, get out there and just start talking to people, because it's
Yeah.
the person you meet at pickleball, at church, at jujitsu, it's whatever. It's those random, like the walking club, like hot girl walks in the morning, that's where you're going to meet somebody who knows somebody that's going to get you in contact with people. So I love that that's your perspective too, because it's so important.
Yeah.
And I think so much of us in the technology world, we're so in our phones and in our screens that I just have to email, I just have to and it's like, no, it's connection. It's that human connection. And that brings
Yeah.
me,
And yes.
oh no, go ahead. Go.
No,
No.
I was going to say, it's always so funny. I meet people every day who come up to me and they say, "Oh my gosh, I follow you on TikTok or Instagram," which is so nice. And I'm like, "Great. Now that I met you, shoot me an email or shoot me, a message, and I'm happy to chat." It is so rare that anyone actually does that, which is wild. But yes,
Well, which is why you're so beloved and so
that's
people adore you. And I mean, that's how I found you, was following on your content on TikTok. But you are so genuine, and I think that shines through. And I hope people listening and watching will take note of this. People want to connect with authentic, genuine humans, and when you're willing to connect, it goes a long way. So I can imagine you've already helped so many aspiring artists. So thank you for being you and being wonderful.
Thank
Okay, so I have
you.
a question about, and I want to play one more clip because I'm really
Yes.
curious if this is a thing as well. Okay, so this is from the Romesh show, for anybody listening, not watching. And I don't know if it's an actress. I don't recognize her, but maybe an actress.
Jamila Jamil.
Thank
She was
God
on The Good Place.
Oh, thank God for you. Okay. So she's on The Good Place, famous actress. And here's what she's saying.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's something called second screen viewing, right? So it's a directive that's being handed out by big studios to filmmakers.
Please, this sounds like what I'm really hoping it isn't.
It is exactly what you probably think it is.
This is something that stands up to...
Which means that you have to acknowledge that people are on their phones the whole time they're watching telly. So you have to simplify the plot so that they'll be able to follow along while they're browsing on their phone. So that's why you'll notice now in random, like in TV shows, even with good actors, they're saying really obvious things about what's happening. They're laying out the entire plot line, and all of their emotions and motivations. Like the language has become really bait and on the nose. And that's because they're being told, the writers, that they have to write in a way that someone can carry on with doom scrolling or shopping online while following it in the background. So nothing can be too complex. Nothing can be too high end. It has to be like we are purposefully dumbing down content, and that is leading to a less nuanced, less interesting, less thoughtful society.
Woof.
I've heard that, but I've only heard that on social media. That's the only time that I've heard that about the second screen and about, there's actually directives from places like Netflix and Hulu that we have to be able to um, be following. And so to me personally, that sounds like something that she saw on TikTok and then took it verbatim. But I could be wrong. Maybe that's being said in rooms I'm not in. But to me, something that is so wonderful that a show does is make me put down my phone. If I'm watching something and I am not scrolling or I am not, that to me is such a feat and I need to get every word. I don't know why I would purposefully want to be making content where that wasn't the case. I don't know. Again, it goes back to my thought that executives in rooms, they're all good people. Everyone wants to make a good show that you're proud of, that you can call your parents and say, look at what I made. And you can call your friends and they all genuinely want to watch it. And so maybe that, again, I'm not going to say that it hasn't been a directive if someone is saying that it has been. But unless I got that in the room or knew someone who got that in the room, I don't know how much I believe it.
Well, that's good because it made me worried. When I was going through journalism school, one of the things they tell you is you have to do all of your reporting at an 8th grade educational level or less for people to understand it, which is terrifying because I'm thinking, oh no, I don't know. That was horrible because to think that the majority of people cannot understand something beyond an 8th grade comprehensive learning level was scary to hear in journalism. And
Yeah.
so when I saw that on TikTok, of course, or maybe that was
No.
IG. I don't know. I was like, oh no, we're all becoming idiots. They're dumbing us down. We're just becoming dumber and dumber every day.
Yeah. No, I saw that on Twitter too, where people were saying, oh, these are, things that I've been told in the room. And again, I would never doubt anyone saying it, but I think that sometimes, I think back to the strike where I think one anonymous exec was quoted as saying, we're not going to stop until all the writers lose their homes. And it's like, okay, that's a crazy thing
Right.
to say. And that's not how everybody felt. And that's, it was like one very low level person allegedly who said it, not excusing it because it's awful, but like that it really changed the tenor of the dispute. And at the end of the day, like one person saying something that is stupid and dumb doesn't mean that every streamer is looking for that. I keep looking over this way because that's where my television is, but that every
No, you're good.
streamer is looking for, this kind of second screen scenario.
Right. Yeah, and keep talking to your television. You're just putting the good juju vibes into the mode that we watch everything. And I do think that that's a great segue into television because
Yeah.
I think that we've seen a huge shift in the last 10, 15 years away from movies into scripted series, into, I remember Downton Abbey was just incredibly done. And even there was a show during COVID, like The Undoing with Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant was a
Yes.
great kind of, even though it wasn't multiple seasons, like, Game of Thrones was like 7 or 8 seasons, but it was like 6 episodes of this great long drawn out storyline. It feels like the industry is shifting towards something that either has multiple episodes or multiple seasons. Would you agree with that, or am I just way off base?
No, I think, what's so interesting is because as a writer, I'm 6 months to a year ahead of what people are seeing the trends in the public.
Oh,
so as a
you can tell us
writer,
everything.
well, as a writer, what's so interesting is that TV is a really hard sell right now. And that even established writers, because of streaming, because of how high that kind of prestige television show roller coaster went, what goes up must come down. And so there has been a decline in the number of shows and also just the willingness that studios and networks have to greenlight those shows. And so I've actually personally seen a trend, at least from a writing perspective, that now I tell writers, if you're looking to break in features, because I think that it's easier to break into. So yeah, there was a huge push for limited. And that was when we were getting really big actors in their first TV roles because movie stars did not want to be TV stars. There were some jokes about that at the Golden Globes and all of those shows, the Emmys a couple of years ago. But I do think that now, a friend of mine just sold a show to Paramount Plus with Nicole Kidman and Elle Fanning, and they've signed on for multiple seasons. And
Wow.
so, um, you know, and that is, I think, so exciting.
Yeah.
So they're not limited series anymore. So,
Okay.
um, I think that is movie stars no longer are saying, "Oh, I can't make the foray into TV," and they're also saying, "I can do it for longer," because
Right.
a long running show, that's where all the money is at. And also, I
Yeah.
think during COVID there was again the heyday of things like Suits and White Collar and shows like that got a second life on streaming, that people started seeing, oh, actually the public loves a procedural, something that
Mm.
feels formulaic, that they can come back to week, that they can tune into at any time. And so I think there's now more in television a push towards those procedural shows, even something like The Pit, where it's episode to episode, even though it's a prestige show.
Interesting. And that does make sense because it makes people feel comforted and secure knowing what they're going to see week over week. It's kind of the same thing, but you feel good, which tells you how chaotic the outside world feels to so many people when they want
Yeah.
to kind of see that same thing over and over. And I am glad that the movie stars have got off their high horses and want to do great TV
Yeah.
because man, I wanna tune in for the episodes. I wanna watch something, that's the thing I love. I am a scripted series type person, or I don't know what the actual term is, but
Yeah,
it was so
scripted.
fun to watch Down Abbey season after season or Game of Thrones, or I don't know, I'm blanking now that we're
Yeah.
actually having the conversation. Yellowstone, but like it was fun, and I'm glad that the big names are signing on because you are gonna make a lot more money and you'll stay relevant too. And I think in the
Yeah.
world of like fast moving content and social media, people forget your face a lot faster now when there's
Mm,
so many more images to look at. And so if you want to stay famous essentially and keep bringing in the big bucks, people need to
yeah.
know who you are and want to buy into your brand as a person. So
Yeah. Well,
I
they're
think
just
that's
also
interesting.
yeah, they're just also because there's just more,
Yeah.
um, there are fewer movie stars, right? In this generation,
Mm.
I have so many projects that star women or men in their 20s, and it's like, who are the movie stars of people in their 20s? Who are the movie stars of people in their early 30s? It's really tough. Once you get into the late 30s and the early 40s, you have, all of the Jennifer Lawrences and the Anne Hathaways, and you can kind of go from there. But there really is, I think it's lacking that the movie stars. Who are our movie stars coming up? I don't know. There aren't a ton of them.
That's a really good point that I didn't think of because again, I'm an elder millennial. So, it's like we have our group, like the Jennifer Lawrences and whatnot. And then you
Yeah.
have the ones I think before us, like Cameron Diaz and Julia Roberts and, Meg
Reese
Ryan and all these.
Witherspoon and yeah.
Yes. Oh, Reese. Take
Well,
me
you're
back.
going
So yeah.
yeah, but it's like, who is the Reese Witherspoon of now? She started when she was a teenager. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
tough. And what makes it tough from a screenwriting perspective is that what has changed, eh, what's become more emphasis has been put on stars again, because how do you get butts in seats?
Yeah.
Stars, and so now the projects that are getting made, even before they're sold, you're expected to come in with a package, which would be a top tier actor, if not more, a big time director or a bigger showrunner that you're bringing in. And so then you bring all of these things to the studios or to the networks to say, hey, look, these people are involved already. And there are only certain people who move the needle. And there are only so many projects that they can do at a time. So
Sure.
it's tough.
That is hard. And are you finding that I guess actors, because they're kind of the face of the story that gets put out there. Are they
Yeah.
needing a big social following to move that needle. Because, for example, somebody that comes to mind that I think is being shoved down our throats, and I think he's great and he's funny and he's charming and whatnot, is Glenn Powell. It's like I see this guy everywhere. He's at every Texas game. He's in every movie. He's in everything. And again, he's great. I don't know him personally. I'm sure he's a lovely human.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why is he everywhere? And there's a million other talented, handsome guys that aren't. Like, what is that factor? Is it like he just has a big social media following and girls think he's cute? Like, I don't get it.
It's not necessarily about social media following. It's about who is a movie star who can get a movie made and a project made. If he is attached to a project, the project gets made. If someone else, who
like,
else?
that simple.
100%. Like, who else is in his league? I mean, I guess it would be Miles Teller.
I love Miles Teller.
But Miles Teller, I mean, Glenn Powell is the Tom Cruise of our generation, right? Like, who else is in that sphere? I don't know if anyone. And so, who else do you call to make a movie like that? I'm not sure. And so, if they're doing a remake of Running Man, he's the Harrison Ford, he's the Tom Cruise. And so that's who they're going to call.
Yeah, well, they need to get a lot more other people because we can't just keep looking at Glenn Powell. And
I don't know, he's okay to look at.
He is. He's very handsome. He is very handsome. Somebody that, and just speaking of very handsome men, that came on my radar recently when I watched a very dumb Netflix movie, is Pearson Fode.
I'm gonna have to look this man up. I don't know who he is.
He's a farm boy, which steals my heart already. Man is gorgeous.
Oh my goodness.
And I'm like, why have I never heard of you before? He was in this movie, like The Wrong Paris, with some Disney star, childhood star.
Just from the title, I assume she went to Paris, Texas, and not, or Paris, Georgia, or something, and not.
and the plot's exactly what you think. But he was beautiful, and I'm thinking, well, why not you? Like, you're a pretty good actor. Like, let's we need to rev up these young guys because all of our guys are starting to age out.
Well, and maybe he will, but again, it's all purely financial. It is who gets this movie made and for more money. That's really what it is. And I have so many projects where we're trying to attach different layers of talent, and it's you start with someone who it gets the movie made and it makes everyone so much more money. And then you just keep going down the list. And it really is a crazy process.
Wow. You got to have thick skin to be in that industry.
You sure do. Thick skin and maybe generational wealth, but that's what I wish I had. It would have helped a lot.
If you know the tree where the money's growing off of, let me know, because I would love to be a part of that. And I'm not even in the industry. So
I need that winning lottery ticket, but
every time it hits like that stupid 1 billion, it's like the 1 billion mark for me. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go buy the Powerball because
100%.
I could make $1 billion work. I feel like I could handle that.
Yeah, I could do it. My dad always says someone's got to win, so why not me? That's
amen to that, sister.
That's the method.
Lots of good work with that money. Make lots of good stories. Okay, last topic, and then I'm going to let you go.
Yeah,
CGI.
Okay.
Do you remember when we were young and they actually had movie sets and they would literally James Cameron made half the frickin' Titanic and had it on the lever to actually put it up vertically. And there were sets. And when somebody was jumping off of something, maybe they were jumping onto a pad, but they were still jumping 8 feet down of a ledge, and now I watch movies and it just looks so doggone fake to me. And the CGI drives me crazy. And I saw it. I turned it off. I was like, I'm going to watch the new Superman. It's free now to stream. And I thought, okay, Rachel Brosnahan, love her from Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. And the guy, David, I don't know, Soren, I can't say, Soren Sweat something.
He's very cute man. Sure.
Very handsome man. They had good chemistry. Yeah. I'm in. I turned it off halfway through. I was so bored by how fake it was.
Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, I hear you. I think it's money, it's ease. It is, you can create a Titanic, but it's also, you can't create whatever planet it is, I guess, that Superman is from. And so right, Krypton, whatever,
Okay.
wherever he's from. I'm not a big comic book person, but if I'm up for a comic book job, I'm a huge comic book person, right?
That's right. You are Marvel, DC. This is your gal.
There you go. Whenever someone, do you know how to ride a horse? Totally. I'll go take a lesson. And yeah, it is one of those things. Technology is so fascinating and interesting and incredible with what we can do. I think of CGI from a different perspective, whereas my first jobs in the entertainment industry were on kids animated shows. And we use CGI in the animation where it's no longer 2D, just people drawing. And instead there is like realistic fur on Puss in Boots hair. It's just so fascinating. So there is so much that we are able to do because of technology and because of CGI. And also, yes, I totally understand. Also, when you watch a movie that's on, film versus digital, there are certain things that feel so cinematic. And
Yeah.
and yes, we do lose with technology. But at the end of the day, it's kind of a filmmaker's choice, right? And so whatever they decide to do is the version that we end up getting. And so I would say if you love what certain filmmakers are doing with keeping things realistic and not using as much CGI, and shooting in ways that feel more cinematic, those are the people to follow and watch. But yeah, I think generally the big budget comic book movies tend to be very
CGI.
technologically produced. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And I think about like Quentin Tarantino, big
Mhm.
sets,
Yeah.
big sets. And when Scorsese did Wolf of Wall Street, and
Mhm.
they literally are using sets. And I love that because I love Rodgers and Hammerstein. Take me back to the old musicals where you have 150 extras dancing and there's these huge productions. And I know that's so expensive now, but when they make them, they sell like popcorn and cake because like think of La La Land was this take back to this old
Sure.
musical genre with extras and dancing and these big stage sets and people loved it. I mean, they loved it.
Yeah.
So-
No, well, two things that I will say. The first thing is you mentioned James Cameron, but then he did Avatar and it was totally CGI, right?
And I
So he
hated it.
flipped. Then he
I would
flipped at the
I'm no professional movie critic and nobody should ever listen to what I like and don't like. I'm not in the industry. I'm not in that way. Avatar, I was like, it's a great story. The first one was interesting, good storyline. They made a good ride at Disney
Yeah.
World about it. And then I just was like, I'm over it and I don't need to see these amazing actors and these like motion detected dots, behind the scenes like making out. I'm like, just give me the
Yeah.
actors, make it
No,
out.
I
Like-
hear you. But you know what I will say? This conversation I think is important because I think that there are going to be a slew because right now things are either like very, very high budget or they're indie, it's kind of low budget. People are doing it on their own. And I think if you want to go back to the days of original, inventive, non-CGI filmmaking, that is the place to find it. It is looking for those indie movies. It is finding those directors and writers who have unique voices and who are making their own stuff. It's those little movies. And so often people say, we want these independent movies and then nobody goes to see them. And so to me, that is the best thing that you can do if you are someone who is like, I am nostalgic for those old days of Hollywood. Go seek out those little movies when they're in theaters near you or when they are on video on demand. Find those and really support them because that's how more of them are going to get made.
That's great advice because it all comes back to the money. And I hate it. And
Yeah.
I know money makes the world go round and
It does.
people got to get paid. People got to pay their bills and it makes sense. But, it's all about following the green kind of
Very much.
at the end of the day. What do you want people listening to this to take away from not even just your craft of screenwriting, but the industry? There's something you could say to the masses of us commoners who just want to watch and just want to be entertained. It's like Gladiator. Are you not entertained? What do you want to say to us people?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is just that no one sets out to make a bad movie or TV show. It is an industry full of people who love entertainment and want to make things that entertain people. And so I, maybe to a fault, always look for the best in others. I've over the past year have maybe started to to be a little bit more critical, but I would say that yeah, that's the biggest thing, is that no one is setting out to make bad stuff, and that so much work, it is truly a miracle if something gets made. There are so many ways that something can go wrong, and I've had most of them happen to me in my career. And it's such a miracle. And so, um, yeah, and seek out the filmmakers and the stories that you want to follow, and support those people. That's, I think, my biggest thing. If you don't like a
I
big
love
Marvel
it.
movie, don't go see it. Go see something else, and support that person instead.
That's awesome. That's great
Yeah.
advice. I love it. Where can people say hi to you? Where can they follow you?
Yes. So I am on TikTok and Instagram. It's at Julia Yorks. I talk a lot about screenwriting. I also talk a lot about starting over in my mid to now late 30s. And so, yeah, I'm also on YouTube-ish at Julia Yorks. And if you're ever interested in talking more about screenwriting, coaching, or joining my community for screenwriters called Scriptwell, you can just reach out to me at hello@juliayorks.com.
Beautiful. I hope everybody does. You're so optimistic. I think
Thank
you have
you.
such a lovely energy, and I think people would be
Thank
very
you.
lucky to work with you as they are trying to bud into that career, because you clearly kind of have seen and done it all. So thank you for just sharing your insights with us. Thank you for being here and just spending some time with us today.
Thank you for having me. You're the loveliest.
Say more. Stop. Say more.
Oh, no. I love it.
Julia has calmed me down, and I really hope the artistry of Hollywood isn't over, because storytelling is at the core of the human experience. Whether we're sitting around a campfire as cavemen talking about legends of the hunt that day, or watching a film that explores the human experience. What we love about movies and great scripted TV shows are the lessons that we learn about our life and about ourselves. So here are your questions for today. What movies or shows really impacted you? What are your favorites to watch over and over? Sound off, tell me, put them in the comments. I want to know. And then dive deeper. Why do you think that is? What lessons, what call to action? What do you learn about yourself? What do you want to be reminded of every time you watch that story? Maybe it's time to go be the hero of your own life. Thanks so much for tuning in today. It would mean the world to me if you could leave a review wherever you listen to your podcast, subscribe on YouTube, share with a friend. I am a one-woman show. It's just me. So any support you can offer is so, so helpful. And remember, whoever pursues righteousness and love finds life, prosperity, and harmony.
The ocean rise, but no one sees. The air is thick, we barely breathe. We paint the cracks, pretend it's fine, but every clock is out of time. We have a problem we ignore. We shut the window, but it's knocking at the door. It's a whisper, it's a scream, it's a shadow in the dream. We have a problem, and it's tearing at the core. The forests fall like dominoes. The ground is shaking, no one knows. We laugh, we scroll, we kill the noise. We drown the truth in louder toys, but the silence roars louder still. The void we made, we cannot fill. We have a problem we deny. It's in the water, it's written in the sky. It's a fever